Okay, now that we have an idea of SQL Server, at least an initial idea of how to get into SQL Server and dealing with any problems you may have, hopefully, and getting started with that, now it's time to do something with it. Based upon the course you're in, online or live, we should have provided you with some examples that we're actually going to utilize for these videos, okay, and also the live course too, meaning they're sitting there on your week's content. It'll probably be called, in this case, week's first script, okay, .SQL. Might be based upon your instructor and what they actually have out there, okay, but basically you should have the very first script out there. I will make sure that these are there for our videos and so on that you can use. So pretty much what I did is download it and it opened it up in a notepad, okay? So when I said open, it opened it up in notepad, just a basic notepad. What I want you to do when you get this, because I want this to be your template, okay? Meaning, instead of you typing all this out, I want you to take this and copy it as your template for your assignments and your databases that you will be creating. So with that said, what you're going to do is you're going to come up here and we'll say edit, and we want to select all, and then we want to copy. So we can do a right click, copy, and then we are going to come in here, and I'm going to show you what to do now, or we'll pin our Option Explorer here. You're going to come up and hit New Query. Everything we're going to be doing in this course is going to be under a query. Like I said, you'll be able to see some of the results of it over here in your Object Explorer, but for the most part, what we're going to be doing is under a new query. In this case here, that's your query. I clicked it and it came up with this blank space. We're going to take this initial script in which I'm going to go through in great detail, okay, to get us started here, and we're going to paste it. So I'm going to do a right click, and I will say paste, okay? All right, cool. And so we have quite a few things here, and we're going to walk through it slowly, okay, in that regard. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do right now is delete this piece down here, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on in another video, okay? I want to kind of keep this simple at first. This is the script and the basis of the script of everything you'll be doing throughout this course. I'm going to go ahead and unpin this now, this course, meaning you're going to be running a script that actually develops the database, populates the database, and queries the database all the way through this course. We'll talk about this more and more and more throughout the course and what you're actually doing, but that's what we're going to be doing in this course. We're going to be emulating doing all that. Okay, this is how professionals do it anyway. This script is a very popular thing, and once you're done with it, you actually learned a little bit of the language, okay? But mainly the language you've learned is SQL all the way through. This actually begins that. These little dots right here, you see dash, 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 okay, that is, once again, a comment. When I say once again, you may have seen comments in other courses, programming courses. That means it's not going to be executed. You want to use these comments. You want your assignments to have these comments, and you want to fill out what your name is, what the class is, IT 111, whatever, and the abstract being what assignment you're actually doing at that time. So if you're working on assignment 3, put assignment 3 there. Assignment 4, put assignment 4 there. Get the idea? Make sure you do that. Helps the teachers out quite a bit, the instructors out quite a bit in regards to knowing which one we're looking at, what person we're looking at, and so on. Okay, so take the 5 seconds to do that, and it will make our lives a lot easier. And if your instructors are happy, everybody's happy. Okay? The next piece here is this use, okay? You see this options. Once again, keep this block right here. Don't erase that. Keep that there. You don't have to do anything more with it, but just keep it there. Again, this is your template, okay? And then what you will do here is you'll sit back, and we're going to be dealing with the databases in this case, all right? Now, based upon your instructor and how you go about doing this, you can have a separate database for each one of your assignments, or you can keep the same database and overpopulate. I like, and I think it's easier if you have a separate database for each one of your assignments, okay? So we'll talk about that here in a second on how to do that. But what you're going to do is you're going to create a database in your Object Explorer, and then you want to make sure it's spelled exactly like it is right here. And then with that semicolon at the end. All right? And I'll show you how to do that. We're going to get in here. Once again, it says problem one. Make sure you put the assignment number here, whatever you're doing, okay? And this is what's called the drop tables. We'll talk about this here in a second also as we walk through it, okay? We will then get into create tables, okay? So what we're basically doing here is we're creating our physical database, all right? So what we're doing in this particular case is we're going to take our entities from our logical view and make them physical, basically make them tables. So entities is what's become tables in a database, all right? And then our attributes become columns in a database, okay? So this is a table, this is a column. Every instance will become a row. You also see there's these things called data types here. Now, we generalize our data types in our logical view, but based upon what database management system you use, you have to equate those generalized data types to what the data types that they actually have. And I'll have another video on that next that kind of talks about the different data types and what we'll be using and how to go about using them. All right? The next piece we'll be doing is, so we have all of that, we'll talk about the primary key. We see the primary key here, and we need to identify the primary key. And once we run this, we literally create our database in this case, all right? And that's kind of how this works. So let's go back and kind of watch it work in a second. So what you're going to be doing, once again, is we're going to talk about, we're going to create the table. Our table should be the name of our logical view table, in this case, students. And we're going to preference that, meaning put a big T in front of it, representing table. Notice the open parenthesis, and then each one of these lines right here represents the column. Notice the comma delimiting each one of those columns. If it's not there, you will get an error. Once you're done with all your columns and you add the constraint, which is like a rule, okay? So what a constraint is a rule stating that this is the primary key. What you're going to do is you're going to name your primary key with the name of the table underscore PK, okay? See how I do that there every time. So it's kind of, I don't want to say a brain dead activity, but for the most part, what you're going to do based upon your assignments is put the name of the table that you created in your logical view, put all the attributes into this, and then add this constraint. It must be there. And all you're going to do is name the constraint, the name of the table underscore PK. Put the word primary key, all uppercase, and then in parentheses, the actual column that's the primary key. So what we're doing there, what that little constraint is doing, is telling the computer, telling the database that this is the primary key and it always must be unique. So the database management system is going to help ensure that it's always unique and we never can have a problem with that. Remember, a primary key is a unique identifier of each instance of a table. And so thus it must be unique. Well, if we put this constraint on there, AKA rule, that's what a constraint means, a rule that says this is the primary key, we're basically telling the database it must be unique. Make sense? Now, as you'll see, here are some data types. I'm going to talk about those a little bit more in detail in the next video, so we'll come back to that. And we see the word not null here. I'm going to probably talk about that a little bit more in the next video too, okay, as we kind of go through it on why that's there. Make sure that closed bracket's there. Some of the things I see with students sometimes, they open the bracket, they forget to close the bracket, so they actually get some errors. If you do stuff that's incorrect, like forget the bracket, like this right here, you're probably going to get some problems. And as you see right here, we get a little red mark. I know students love the red squiggly lines. If we go read it, it will say syntax error. It's expecting that closed bracket, all right? So for each table, you must have an open bracket and a closed bracket. I'm going to tell you one more time, use this as your template. You don't need to redevelop everything. Cut and paste is your friend, but make sure it's complete. Sometimes students just try to go too fast and they don't walk through everything unless that's where the problem shows up at. Does that make sense? Okay. So this particular script is basically creating the 3 tables in our database. So let's go back and talk about, let's see, creating the database. I'm going to come here real fast and do a rule. I probably should have done this before. I'm going to delete this though. And I'm going to delete my database, close, and go from there. Okay, so my database is out of there. What you will do in this case here is that you're going to create your database. So you have a couple options. You can, in some situations, people just create a DB SQL1, and that's perfectly fine. Or after teaching this for many, many years now, I actually recommend you actually create separate databases for all your assignments. So for get them to buy it, put in DB, get them to buy it. For me like a lot, put in DB, me like a lot, and create separate databases, and that way you'll never really get into trouble as often. So how do we do that? You're going to go over here, you're going to do a right click. Okay, here's what I do. I cut and paste this, so I will do a copy. Okay, I will come over here then, do a right click. You must do this first before you run the script. Do a new database, and I paste in right here, paste the actual name, and I say okay, not add, just okay, and now the database is there. That's beautiful. Now I come back over here, put my cursor above all the code, okay? I'm not really worried about putting above every comment, just above the first line of code, and then I can execute this. See this execute button right here? And I execute it. And it says commands completed successfully. That's what you want to see. If you get anything else, and you will, read the errors and we got to fix it, okay? There is a sense of frustration dealing with a script because it needs everything done exactly, perfectly correct. Not sort of correct, kind of correct, a little bit correct, exactly correct, or it will not work, okay? So you need to make sure you're focused on making sure everything's spelled the same, everything looks the same, all the semicolons are where they need to be, all the brackets are where they need to be, and so on. So what do we do here? So if I come back over here, I'm going to do this thing called refresh. Sometimes you got to usually you got to refresh it after you run the script. And I actually click on this and I look at the tables. Okay, I created my database before. It created these tables right here. This script execution created the tables. And if I click on this, I can look at the columns. Okay, I'm going to pull this over a little bit. Here's the columns I just added with my create. All right, and it told me a little bit about everything, that this is the primary key. That was based upon the constraint. All right, they're not null. We'll talk about that here in the next video. And the data types, and we'll talk about those in the next video. Make sense? Not too hard, right? It actually is not. It's not supposed to be rocket science, but it's the first step. Now what we have done in this short little video here is we've taken our logical view, okay, and we made those particular tables. Now you might be saying, well, how about the relationships? And if you are, you're thinking right. Well, we're not quite there yet. We'll show you how to do that probably in a couple weeks, okay, a week or so. And but right now we're just going to step into this, create these tables, and play around with them a little bit. All right, I'll see you in the next video to talk about data types and that not null that's sitting there.